Hi everyone. Yes, it's now being recorded. Hi everyone who is joining us. Good morning, good day, good evening, depending on where you're coming from. Actually, that's my first question to everyone in the audience. Please let us know where you're connecting from. We have people all around the world. Scotland in here. Barry, you're from the US. Helena, you're from Canada. Where at? We have Eric from Spain. Nice. Canada. All right. Well, I would assume that majority of people would be from the west part of the world. All right. More people are joining. Don't be shy. Let us know where you're from. Hello, everyone. Okay. All right. While people are joining us, perhaps let me do initial introductions. What we're going to discuss today and who is our speaker today. First of all, thank you for joining. I really appreciate your time and I really hope that you will enjoy today's session. The topic for today's webinar would be is like something that finance teams deal with every day. The connection between accounts payable process quality and tax accuracy, as well as the value of automation in compliance. We will explore why accounts payable inconsistencies become tax issues and how the teams can tighten things up without adding work. So let's first introduce our speakers. Myself, my name is Alex Kesselman. I am a solutions engineer at ApprovalMax. But here with me today, I have two amazing speakers, Helena Patience and Barry Nelson. Helena, Barry, I will allow yourself to introduce yourself. What do you do? What is your experience? Let us know what both
Certainly,
of you.
I'll go first. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Helena Patience. I'm a CPA CMA. I'm based in Victoria on the southern tip of Vancouver Island in Canada. And I own a CPA firm. We've got 22 employees across the country, and we service clients in Canada and the US. We work with high growth companies that are looking to really scale. And so we have a lot of fun challenges that come up with our clients, especially around AP. AP management and tax. So I'm glad to be here today to share some of a couple of horror stories, but also some tips on how to manage those two things well. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to Barry.
Yeah, thanks. Well, welcome everybody, and nice to meet you all. As they mentioned, my name is Barry Nelson. I'm actually located in Minnesota and a sales manager at Avalara. So I've been helping customers in the small to mid-size space for what, for 12 years now, helping with automation changes through ERPs as well as now at Avalara for the last 5 years, almost six now, um, with sales tax compliance, right? So whether it be a AP and use tax related or other sales tax returns, all that fun jazz that we get to worry about too. So happy to share some experiences that I've seen both with small and mid-sized companies and some ways hopefully that you guys can take some pointers out of this to help streamline some of those processes at the end.
Amazing. Super happy to have you both in here. And for everyone who joined us, we're doing this in the conversational as a conversational panel. So I'll try to, as much as I could, to guide the discussion. And both Helena and Barry will share their perspective. But before we'll dive into our topic, I would like first to run a poll, just to understand what we're dealing with today, or which accounting systems you're using, and just some information about who is in the audience. I'm in quiet. Looks like I can hear. I can see the. By the way, Barry and Helena, can you hear me? Yeah, all fine.
Yep,
Eric, it
we
looks
can
like
hear.
something is on your side.
You're just
Maybe
a
try
little
to.
bit you're a little bit quieter than Barry though, Alex. So
I'll try to scream then.
okay.
All right, so the poll is on. I hope now it's better. The poll is on. Feel free to select which accounting system you're working with, and we will then continue into our discussion. Now we need to have like some elevator music playing on the
Right.
background.
I would offer to sing, but I don't know if anybody wants to hear that yet this morning.
All right, so it seems like the poll is now being done. So we have, well, division between QuickBooks Online, Zero, and Other. I wonder what's in Other. Let us know in the chat section, by the way, which accounting system you're using. Maybe you're in an ERP session, let's say maybe like NetSuite or Dynamics. So I'd be happy to see which one. But in the meantime, let's get into that. Let's get into today's topic. So Barry, let's start with you. From your perspective in tax compliance, why are finance teams feeling more pressure today than ever a few years ago, even a few years ago?
Yeah, great question, Alex. I mean, we're really seeing it. There's just get to be more and more stricter regulatory compliance, especially around use tax and really, auditors expecting cleaner and more consistent data. What we see from our experience right now, specifically around use tax, that's one of the low-hanging fruit that people or an auditor comes and looks for almost first, right? Between that and exemptions, kind of seem like they're usually the top two that we see from our experience. So really being able to provide accurate and quick data if you were to get audited or even feel comfortable with the data that you have is something that we're seeing more and more, at least finance team having more pressure on, as well as just the overall accuracy of information, tax rates that vendors are charging too. So it's a lot more strict compliance, and these rules change unfortunately too, right? Different rates from different vendors, different locations, things like that. So a lot of you're kind of aiming at a moving target half the time, and those are just getting a little bit more and more strict all the time too.
Hmm. Yeah, it feels like a never-ending tug of war. More regulations comes from the government, more tech being involved and how to deal with all of these regulations. Never-ending story. Helena, from your perspective, from the finance team perspective, does
Mhm.
that pressure show up in accounts payable as well? How has it changed it in your day-to-day?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this has been well, this last year has been was an interesting year for most people, just given the changes in the market, and it doesn't seem to have made much of a shift this year. And so, from an AP perspective, it's getting a little bit challenging because there's a huge focus on accuracy. I mean, we always want AP to be as accurate as possible, but as far as like knowing about potential cash outflows well in advance so that we can plan for the cash flow has been really big. Clients are also like maybe holding on to payments, taking a little bit longer to pay their vendors. That impacts clients on both sides. So if they're, customers are not paying them on time, that creates cash flow problems. The other way around, if you're holding on to those, then it's like, okay, it's just a looming cash flow issue in the future that you're gonna have to pay. So it's just the cash flow has become a little bit of a hot topic. Well, a very big hot topic. And and there's no wiggle room for, oh, that vendor forgot to send us their invoice for 2 months, and now we've got a big surprise because we just were managing our pennies at the moment, right? So, and also with this and just chasing better cash flow, I find a lot of companies are moving into new markets, which creates a lot more. That's obviously a lot of operational challenges come up. It's also, it's great opportunities for folks, but when it comes to sales tax, people are, these small companies are running up against very big sales tax compliance challenges that we would normally see with much larger companies that would have the resources for all the right consultants and support. And nowadays it's like, you can start an e-com store and then you end up in some pretty complex sales tax considerations very quickly. And so to the point where like they just don't even have the cash flow to support the compliance needs, right? And so that can get really challenging for folks as well. So yeah, there's a lot of manual processes and things like that we're always working through, but we're trying to get people to automate as much as possible and make sure we've got the real-time data as much as possible to help drive those cash flow challenges. So it's AP is a hot topic right now.
Okay, yeah, but it also sounds like these manual processes, that's something that really holds, finance teams. And I would like to focus on that a little bit more. So maybe
Mhm.
from the AP perspective, some of these AP issues that doesn't look like the, tax problems at first, but turn into tax challenges later. Uh, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, some of the bigger issues is like I mentioned, not getting the bills on time, or maybe we get the bills on time, but they're going through a manual approval process and they get lost in somebody's email or lost on somebody's desk. And then, we've tried to close the year or the month or whatever, and then we've got some things showing up later on to surprise us. That can cause issues from a sales tax standpoint. It's also just time consuming when people are, chasing manual approvals. You might get classification issues. So we're trying to, make sure that every segment in every business is doing well. You might have a company that has a couple of different sales channels or locations or whatever it is. And depending on the team who's giving that input of where that expense is supposed to be related to, or that bill is supposed to be related to, the data is not accurate, then it's really hard for us to sit there and go, okay, the gross margin on this unit is making sense or not making sense. And so the accuracy is a big deal. And so having, uh, you know, team members that are really double checking the work from the operations team, the people, the boots on ground, to make sure that it's accurate is always a challenge. It's definitely becoming a bigger challenge just because there's so much more focus on the absolute accuracy right now. Um, and just with the timing of things, it just creates problems where you're kind of working on multiple month ends at the same time. So if we're getting we've had instances where we're getting like a whole bunch of approvals way later. They might be expense reimbursements where they've never gone through a bank account, and so we had no idea that they were sitting around anywhere. And then they're throwing the numbers off, and we've already reported, and now we've got thousands of dollars that just popped in front of us. So there's lots of challenges that people are going through right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. I've so many different examples of customers that I've been working with recently. Like one of the example would be when a customer came and they have 5,000 suppliers, 5,000 vendors, and around half of them it's a duplicate of a duplicate of a duplicate of a
Oh,
duplicate. They have
golly.
no idea which one is the correct one. So it's just a matter of, selecting manually every single time which one should potentially be the correct one. So it's been a couple of months just trying to clear the data.
Clean up the data, yeah.
Barry, on your side, what do you find the most challenging thing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to build on that a little bit, and I think Helena mentioned earlier too, with some of these tax changes that are going on too, and your vendors now selling multiple different channels, having expanded Nexus footprints too. Some of
Yeah,
the things around, are they charging you the right tax? Like, do they have you in the wrong jurisdiction, or is that accurate? Especially as sometimes these lines or these rates change. Not to mention, did your vendor have tax liability or a reason to collect tax last month, or did they hit their economic nexus threshold this month? So are they starting to charge tax and weren't previous? Those types of details as well that you might easily miss or not catch, or maybe you catch 2 or 3 months down the road versus in the first month or on that first invoice. Also, sometimes just missing, product level detail too. So especially if you're in manufacturing, are you getting charged tax on items that you're using in your manufacturing process versus not? And being able to classify that. And a lot of times, just inconsistent vendor setup is where we've run into it. Where just conflicting tax treatment kind of goes back to the, hey, are we, getting calculated or getting charged tax or not on items depending on how we're using it, right? Ultimately just creates a lot of downstream rework. And it's typically not easy to find unless you're going through all of your AP invoices, right? So just some of that causes a lot of rework, a lot of extra time spent that could be spent obviously in other areas right now.
Hmm. Well, I suppose that you both work a lot with customers and customer facing, and I'm pretty sure you both have quite a bucket of different examples of the different AP issues that snowballed over the time. Maybe if you can give me some of these examples, for the audience to learn what are these issues might look like.
for sure. I can go first. I think I alluded to it a bit in my last question, but just we had a client who had a significant amount of approvals that were delayed, and that put a huge cash flow crunch on them because something didn't come in on time. It didn't go through the approval process properly. And so, it just kind of surprised everybody at the worst time. And it was urgent and they didn't have the cash for it and were already trying to raise. And so, there's just another like bit of salt on the wound of cash flow trauma right now. And so it becomes really, really challenging for people when they don't have those right processes in place. So yeah, it's been a bit difficult on the operational accounting side, I think, just and also like working with clients, like, we try to put as much in place, but we're so dependent on their team. So like if something's not going through a bank account, we can't see that that exists, right? We might know that there should be something coming down the line at some point, but we don't always know about all the decisions that were made last minute or changes that were made last minute because we're just not there all the time, right? And so we get, surprises sometimes just in the flurry of all the things that everyone's trying to do that make it challenging. Yeah. So just those approval delays and surprise AP just really are hurting people right now. So the communication is an area we're working with our clients just to like get that inflow of like what might be coming up next week that we haven't talked about yet or next month, because there's a lot of changes happening and people are pivoting a lot now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've seen a few others too, especially with if people are having their vendors send product to different places, like are they charging you the right sales tax
Yeah.
for those other locations, right? Or are they just charging it based off the headquarters, even though that rule might not be the case, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that also just comes back to like, hey, are the vendors set up properly too, right?
Yeah.
When you're making those purchases, we've seen it where customers, unfortunately don't catch. I think I mentioned earlier that you're paying tax on one of the items that you're buying from them, or aren't paying tax, but you are supposed to be, and then goes back to the manual rework and trying to get a credit on that tax that you've paid if you weren't supposed to be getting charged on that, and things like that
Hmm.
lead into some manual work inaccuracies, and sometimes unfortunately it doesn't show up until somebody's knocking on the door looking into the data a little bit more closely.
For sure. And if I could just add to that too, Barry, there's people
Mhm.
from different countries on this call today. This comes up for a lot of my Canadian clients. They assume that if they're selling into the US, they don't need to charge sales tax. And they assume that if they're working with vendors in the US, that they're not going to get charged GST and PST, whatever's applicable. And that's just not the case. Like, and
Mhm.
we were able to get away with it a little bit more when everything was a lot more manual. But now with this global economy, in countries like the UK realizing that there's a lot of lost tax if they don't get on top of the Nexus situation. Um, that you have to be very careful about where you're selling now, and it makes it so easy to just pop into Shopify, click a couple buttons, and now you're selling into different
Mhm.
regions, and people don't realize that they're getting themselves into some interesting sales tax situations. But it also happens on the AP side too, where people just don't just assume, oh, we're working with we're buying from a US company or we're buying from a company somewhere else. So we don't need to worry about them charging us sales tax, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, I think you saw the one, or you mentioned the one word that we see a lot that people just assume, right?
Yeah.
Because this stuff is really hard to keep up with and really hard to go find information on quickly or accurately.
Yeah.
You have to go to, chat. We use, AI a lot and chat GPT for writing emails, all that fun stuff, but like that's not an accurate source of data anymore and things like that. So it just makes it challenging too to like, hey, where do we go find this stuff, even if you are trying to do it right?
Yeah. It reminds me when a person flew to one of the countries asking ChatGPT if he need a visa to go there, and he said no. So he came there, and eventually he needed a visa. I wonder if those things happens all the time with the corporations as well when they're dealing with the taxes.
Oh,
Mhm.
I
I'd
would say
like
so.
Before we'll move to the next topic, I would like to run a poll just to understand from the audience perspective about your current AP process. Do you think are they standardized or not? So let us know in the poll, because we are moving in a little bit into the wild territory right now. We'll be talking about some patterns, some of the major challenges across the markets and across the clients, and then we will be looking into how we can actually solve them. So let us know. I didn't see any responses from my side, so I was just wondering, hoping that people are answering. I'm pretty sure we do. All right. It just reminded me that I've recently was moving from one country to another, and I was chatting with ChatGPT trying to figure out the full plan of how to move our stuff, our dogs, everything. And it was giving me a
Yeah.
lot of advice how to deal with that and this and that. So a lot of it actually was complete lie. And afterwards, while I was already passing through, let's say, the borders with the dogs, I know what's the procedure looks like. And I was telling, hey, ChatGPT, please remember, this is how it actually works. This is not what you thought it's supposed to work. So update your memories.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, well, I know we'll probably get into it here. I'm assuming at some point, but like, there's a lot of great ways you can use it too, right? That
yeah,
can be accurate and whatnot. But there's also some really interesting things that come up with it too. Still,
it's true. Do not over rely on the technology. Because in the essence, it's just giving you some probabilities, not even know the answer. All right, so let's take a look on what we have. Around more than 50% have mostly standardized with some exceptions. That's perfect. Some have fully standardized with defined approval workflows. Well, that's perfect. So you have it all cleared out. But a lot still have largely manual. Well, I'm very glad that you are here because hopefully after today's webinar, you will find the way how to resolve that. All right, let's continue on and let's get into the wild. So let's maybe zoom out a little bit, and I would like to understand what are the most top recurring AP and tax challenges you see. So let's maybe compare notes, and here, Helena, I would like to start with you.
I mean, I think I mentioned this already, but I think it's just really getting the bills on time. So if we can get those on time, get those approved on time, then we can close the books on time, then we can make sure that we're compliant with our filings, and making sure that we've got the information that we need ready to go. I think there's also just I talked a little bit about challenges with getting inputs from the team, and on coding inputs. It could be classifications or GL codes or what have you. And sometimes that data accuracy can be a challenge too. So you need to have the processes in place to make sure like that you're double checking that we're booking the same kinds of expenses to the same buckets all the time. And so that the data is the books are accurate at the end of the day. So those are kind of um, you know some of the top challenges. And then as well, just on the AI topic, I mean, sometimes we're leaning into AI without proper validation. And so that can be challenging. Even the AI that's built into some of our accounting software it's never going to be 100%. Like I still see our job as one of validation. So even with applications like Dext and with the OCR functionality in ApprovalMax, it's going to do its job, but we still need to validate it, right? Just in case, because there's always room for interpretation, right? And depending on the unique situation, or it could be even just like a difficult vendor like Amazon, where it could go into like 17 different accounts depending on what it is. So just making sure that folks are still doing their work to validate the assumptions that AI is giving them to make sure that the data accuracy is good. Because there's a lot more scrutiny in the books right now, just with cash flow, and also a lot more M&A activity too. And so with those due diligences, we need to make sure that the data is as accurate as possible. So a couple of things. I think I was supposed to give one, but there's three.
Okay.
Over to you, Barry.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I like it. No, and I mean, just to, I guess, piggyback on the AI topic too. I mean, since we're talking about it, I mean, Avalara right now, like we use it a lot across all of our businesses. I think that's how we can consolidate as much data as Avalara has. Is I think I heard the other day that we pull data from 60,000 different sources to
Wow.
get our tax information up to date. All of it is validated by a human before we roll it out into one of our products. But we use the tools, the AI and such to get that information, to make it, actionable data, right? To make sure we can validate it. So it can be a great tool, but, you know, kind of getting to a little bit more around kind of some of the recurring AP processes and some of the gaps we see is a lot of times just missing and incomplete, invoices sometimes from your vendors, right? Or some of the fields that aren't completely filled out, especially new vendors when you're getting a new vendor signed up, not having those processes all the way down back to the addresses and locations for where they're shipping to. If your headquarters and your ship to is not the same all the time, then that can cause those gaps. And same thing with product tax codes, or just product taxability in general, can be tough. And one actually that we see quite often, and maybe we see it a little bit more in our space, in the software space too, or when you buy it, is allocating across multiple locations. In the world we have, when people, especially in software, when a lot of companies buy software, well, as we all know, as we're definitely seeing on the call today, and even us here, is we have a lot of remote workers, right? And
Mhm.
allocating that tax that you could be, taking advantage of that across multiple locations where that tax is, or where that software is being used. So being able to do that are some of the challenges that we see where, maybe there's gaps on savings that could come from like some of these allocations and stuff like that as well, versus just kind of what they're getting charged today.
Hmm. There are quite
For
a
sure.
few points that you both mentioned. And let's make, let's say, like incomplete invoice data, the
Mhm.
over reliance on the EI, product tax codes, and things like that. Let's make it a bit easier for our audience today. If we're talking about the audit season, it's coming, and what we should be like, what is the biggest pain point? Which one you would always say, this one you have to look first, everything else can come second, third, and so on.
Yeah, for me, I guess the biggest pain that I see is the time it takes to find the data and then like to get the data out and then identifying if there's missing or inconsistent data that lives within it, right? That's is
Mm,
typically the number one most time consuming piece of it, especially like leading into an audit or something like that.
yeah. I guess on my side would be I agree with that. And then also coding accuracy. So, if we don't have things allocated correctly, the approvals have been rushed, or things are not consistent, this sort of wastes so much of the team's time going back and trying to fix things after the fact. So, and sometimes that'll impact the filings we've done in the past. And it's just a whole big time suck that we've got way bigger things to deal with right now with the challenges that folks have with running businesses, or I think has gotten a lot more difficult in the last couple of years here. And so we need to spend as much of our time as possible actually supporting them with their business growth and their business challenges, and not on like minute data problems all over the place that are actually having bigger problems if we don't get on top of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can allocate and make sure that two things are being pointed out. First, the data should be consistent, and the
Yeah.
second, it's actually, I think one goes with another quite well, that the coding should be accurate and that the
Yeah.
data that you have is consistent and accurate. Otherwise, it will be impossible to work in the future. So for the audience that is here, I would like to run a third poll, very quick one, just to understand what is you're experiencing. What are the tax issues or audit challenges, maybe due to some accounts payable errors that you had in the past? Let us know. I see one of the questions came in from Jay. Could you send out the recording afterwards, please? Thanks. Yes, absolutely. The recordings will be sent to everyone who registered, everyone who isn't here, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, on this poll, Alex, I know which one we talk to a lot of people with, and I know which one I wish we talked to a lot of people with, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yep.
All right. Mm,
I wish they were all watertight.
I do too. Although maybe we wouldn't be in business if that was the case, but I think there's also some time savings there, right? But yeah, it's a little bit easier conversation then sometimes if people are doing it well.
but
Yeah.
if everyone will be just watertight, then you won't be able to really reach out afterwards like, hey, you had a
I don't know.
problem, let's try to fix it all together.
Oh,
Yeah.
because I love nagging. It's my favorite part of my job.
Okay, so what we see on the results, actually, well, maybe great news for us, not great news for the audience. Yes, it was a significant cleanup effort, almost half, and even more, not yet, but we've had some closed calls. So yeah, there is no one in the audience who actually had it all watertight. So yeah, there's always still a room for improvement. And that's great because we're actually coming to the next topic. Because previously we were talking about the problems, we were talking about the challenges, something that were recurring, things that we see all the time. But what about the solutions? Let's now talk about solutions. So where does automation make the biggest difference from your perspectives?
Sure. I can give a quick run on history on Entreflow. So we've been around for 10 years, and we started off 100% cloud and 100% remote. So back in 2015, which was we were definitely at the bleeding edge of technology back then because there wasn't a lot of cloud-based tech out there. But we started off doing fractional CFO and FP&A work for high growth companies, and had a really hard time doing that because the data was not great at the bookkeeping level. So it was hard to do forecasting and other things like that, analysis, when the bookkeeping wasn't done very well. And so we took on doing the bookkeeping and controllership right away so that we could get much cleaner books to work from. and leaned into QuickBooks Online and Xero, and other applications like HubDoc and Dext, before ApprovalMax at OCR, obviously, to help automate the bookkeeping as much as possible. And it obviously was a big lift because every new client was basically like a software conversion, or it's still a lot of cleanup nowadays, but at least there a lot more clients are using the software that we use. So that really helped us to automate the bookkeeping as much as possible, which essentially just reduces human error factor. Like that, our biggest challenges in the accounting industry is ourselves at the end of the day with human error factor, and that's nothing that we can get away from. And so we try to put as much technology in place to automate the process. Now, I'm not at the point now where I'm using a fully AI-based accounting software to fully do the bookkeeping because nothing is quite ready yet. And a lot of times it's because they haven't considered that we do accrual accounting. And especially in Canada, you can't get away with cash basis unless you're a fisher or a farmer for the most part. And so the accrual piece is challenging for the AI tools right now. So hopefully they'll figure that out at some point. But just having the right software in place is great. But you also need to have the right processes. So I talked about approval processes. I mean, if we're doing it manually, even if we have QuickBooks and all these other applications in place, we still have risk, right? And so that's why we use ApprovalMax to help with automating the approvals and being able to track those properly, and having rules in there for coding to make our lives a lot easier, because everything that we put in place that helps to automate just a little bit is going to reduce the chance of error. And also it saves us time so we can spend more time helping the clients with the bigger issues, because what's keeping them up at night is not like the amount of approvals that need to get AP that needs to get approved, right? It's other things. And so we want to be able to be there and support them as much as possible, in meaningful ways. So that's I think, if I were, listening to this webinar right now, I'd look at, either if it's my own business or if I'm supporting clients, looking at where there's opportunity to automate the work so that you're lowering your data risk. I know for a lot of people that always sounds like a big lift to change out software, but in a lot of the software nowadays is really it's cheap and cheerful for the most part. Like I've done massive ERP implementations is not the same thing. Putting something like ApprovalMax or Avalara in place, which we've done both of, are reasonably short time frame, and they have both of them very good teams to help support with that. So this is not like everything's at a standstill. They're very quick and easy software to put in place, and easy for people to learn as well. So it's not as disruptive as it would have been 10 years ago using older, outdated, desktop-based software. So, so having the right software in place, but also having the right processes in place. So in the parts that you can't automate, you need to make sure that there's really clear processes and that everybody's following them. And there's a certain amount of like putting a process in place and then going back and ensuring that everyone's actually following it. That needs to happen from a accountability standpoint. Otherwise, the software is not going to do what it's supposed to be doing, if people are mucking about and doing their own thing in there when they're not supposed to. So, at the end of the day, just taking a step back, looking at what you're doing and where you can automate, and maybe make 2026 the year of automation for yourself if you're not there yet, and save yourself a lot of time and prevent issues for the future.
I have a follow-up question here.
Yes.
Sorry, Barry, just a moment
No, you're all good.
to continue with that. You've spoke a lot about the applications, about the software that you're using, and you have a vast experience for the past 10 years in cloud accounting. What is your blueprint when you are selecting these new pieces of software? How do you test them? How do you select which this one would be perfect for my clients?
Yeah, for sure. You have to do your due diligence. Like you can't say, oh, this person over here said it was really good, so I'm just going to go start using it. You need to make sure that it actually works for that specific client or for your specific company. And so making sure, first of all, you're clear about what your requirements are. And I'm not saying this has to be like a multi-month kind of process, but just sit down and think, like, what are the problems that I'm trying to solve with this software? What are the things that are coming up? What would I like to see automated? And getting that list together, and then go look at different software. There's loads of other accountants out there that have recommendations for different softwares that they use. They're always going to list like a handful in every kind of uh, vertical. So go take a look at those. You got to demo them. I usually get a access to a sandbox or something like that, so I can go in there and try to break it. Actually, test out the the workflows that you're trying to do in there and make sure that it's going to do the things that you want it to do, because you don't want to figure those things out after you've gone and implemented it and sold it to your team, and then they're mad because it's not doing what they expect, right? You can, if automation and software selection are not your MOs in life, no judgment, just find someone who does. So there's got to be someone on your team or someone you know that gets super excited about technology. Bring them in, make sure that they're bashing about in the software and trying to bust it up as well, and make sure it's going to do what you need it to do. And then just go implement it. Like rather than sitting on, I see this all the time. People make a decision on what they want to start using, and then they sit on the decision waiting for there to be time. And in the meantime, you're wasting time doing manual processes. And one of my favorite speakers, he's got to be in his 90s now, and he's written hundreds of books. Brian Tracy, very very cool dude. But he had a quote that was 1 hour of planning saves nine. And so just, it's the same kind of concept with putting software in place too. Like if you can spend an hour to put a better piece of software in place, it's going to save you nine later, right? So just spending the time to do that right away once you've made that decision, and then roll it out, and then make sure that you're training everybody and following up to make sure they're using it as it was designed to be used, because people muck about in their processes and software all the time. I'm sure you've seen very interesting things, Barry, over the years, and Alex. But just, use the software as it's designed. It's got its, purpose, and is built the way it is for certain very specific reasons. So just use it the way it's designed. Obviously, there's weird use cases all over the place, but your company should not be that much of a unicorn that you have to change every way that you do things in a piece of software. I'd say there's something else going on there. And yeah, and then just monitor, check in, and see how things are going with people. I think it's really important to build a relationship with your software app partners as well. So give them feedback. I'm sure you guys love getting feedback from Entrepreneur all the time. But things that you'd like to see or things that aren't working as well as you like, and help to kind of define where that app is going as well. That's what I love about this ecosystem, is that the software companies are very open to hearing feedback. If I can't reach out to Microsoft or Google and gave them feedback on their applications, they're not doing anything with that feedback, right? Whereas, in our fintech space here, there's a lot of appetite for people to get feedback and help to make improvements for the software for the future for everybody.
Yeah, that is 100% true. We are eager about customers' feedback because that probably would be the largest driver for all the new features being released for the roadmap.
Yeah.
100%. So Barry, from the software perspective,
hmm
where automation, makes the biggest difference from your standpoint?
Yeah, no, great question. Because I mean, ultimately, where automation we're seeing people that are leveraging it and getting the most out of it is those that can automate manual processes and then look and easily action on data that's wrong, right? Because typically what we find out is in any of these situations, you're looking for cleaner data. And if you have bad data, that's usually, maybe the 20%, right? And you don't want to spend your time on the other 80% that's typically clean. And so having solutions in place that support that make you maybe aware of issues or errors that do come up, especially in an AP process, be able to pull those out, is somewhere that we see a lot of companies, take advantage of, like, hey, we want to manage by exception now versus everything, right? So having cleaner data, being able to make those determinations helps. And I mean, Helena, you mentioned it, and it brought me back as you're talking about, how to get ready for automation or to go through a process. In my previous life when I was selling ERP, it was have a plan, right? And like item out what your processes are that hurt today, so that when you do evaluate those solutions, hey, does this change? Like, can they actually automate this, or anybody? And that's not Avalara, not ERP, like just that's a general statement. Um, because if there's errors of concern, like obviously I live in the space of tax compliance now, and if one of those manual steps is keeping up with tax rates or rules, things like that, like find a solution that can solve that for you, right? That's the goal, so that you can use your time elsewhere. So the one area is, tax compliance is not a revenue generating activity for any business that I know of right now, unless you're in the world of it, I guess. But um, outside of that, like it just, being able to reduce, those corrections and just really focus on the exceptions versus the bulk is what we see, where automation really makes the biggest impact for most businesses.
Yeah, tell that to HMRS when they're not making revenue from my taxes.
Can I just add one thing, Barry,
Yeah.
to the processes? So you make a really good point there. So it's important to take a step back and look at your current processes and understand what's happening, so you know what you're trying to fix. I find what can happen sometimes is that the business owner doesn't really understand or know all of the winky wonky processes that are happening in the background in place of good systems. And so there might be random spreadsheets and things like this that are floating around that not everybody knows about. And so if you're in a firm working with a company to try to help them find new software, it's important not to just get the inputs from the business owner because they often don't know about all the little ineffective things that are happening in their team. And then as well, if you're the business owner looking for software for yourself, make sure you sit down and actually talk to your team and get them to walk you through, not just talk about it, but walk you through all the things that the steps that they're taking, because that's where you can really find some supreme inefficiencies and also get really clear on why is it that they're holding on to this spreadsheet for this and this spreadsheet for this and this spreadsheet for this, because if they carry on using those spreadsheets in spite of the new softwares in place, it's not going to make a difference, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I used to chuckle sometimes because when people would go to implement like a new ERP and they're like, because they're complaining so much about their old ERP. It's like, well, did you actually map out what those processes are? Because if you
Yeah.
didn't, and to your earlier point about, hey, having to go customize this ERP, you might run into the same issue that you're already in. So use it how it is, but make sure you can leverage that and understand your own process before you start looking into some of these other solutions, no matter what solution it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me when the customer came and they were explaining the problem that they had, that everything is now being manual and it's only just one person approving things. And now we want, to automate everything. So we will start planning on what their workflow should look like. And essentially they wanted to have, again, just one person approving everything just on the platform now, which kind of makes no sense at all, which is basically you're doing that manually over the email, but you just want to do it within the platform, but it's still a one person
One
job.
person. Yeah.
Try to delegate things, and then you'll actually see the benefit of doing that. All right. We spoke a lot about the data consistency today. So if we now made all of our AP, data becomes consistent, is the problems now disappeared? No more issues. That's it.
I
I
wish.
wish. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can help with a little bit of that too. Like, I mean, it would it would reduce the time, right, if you have clean data. But then you're starting to look at like, all right, is there a change that goes into effect in this jurisdiction or that jurisdiction in these states, right? That at least from a U.S. standpoint, it makes it more predictable and a little bit easier to then, like I said earlier, you're managing by exemption there versus having to look at the whole scope of it. Um, but unfortunately, it just doesn't totally disappear, right? There's still work that needs to be done um, on any solution or any process there.
Yeah. It means your life is going to be a lot easier, right? And there's still that human error factor. But for the most part, everything should be a lot smoother. So, if you have audits or, when it comes to year end or month end, it should be a lot easier to just whip through those quickly. Nobody wants to, there's nothing more demoralizing than having to fix work that's already been done in the past. And so just that has a huge time suck on the team. So being able to ensure that you have a higher, correction factor there is going to make everyone's lives a lot easier, and that's obviously more satisfying for people in their work. Um, so yeah, that's I think it's never going to be perfect, but it'll be a lot better.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we actually start touching these, grounds of how we can fix those challenges. Let's now get a bit more practical, like into the real world, how we're planning on fixing those things.
Hmm.
So for the finance teams, something to do this month, like an action list, even without buying any software, what they can do right now to improve, accounts payable and tax accuracy.
I can start. So I think just to Barry's comment there about the processes, you can take a step back and start documenting your processes. Are they written down? Are they consistent? Are they clean? A little quick flow chart to explain like where data is flowing and who's doing what along the process can highlight some time suck right away. So there might be some quick wins that you can put in place to fix things now, even before you implement some new software, and get everybody's brains thinking about improving and things. Because sometimes the biggest challenge with software implementations is actually the change management, because humans don't really want change. It's the one thing we all have to deal with in life, but that and taxes and death. But
It's a little promotion here.
inevitable. It's inevitable. And yeah, so just getting people into the mindset of change and improvement. Because sometimes teams can get a bit on the defensive when someone comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to change all these things on you." And yes, you're doing a great job, but we've outgrown these manual processes. They can get a little bit sensitive. So, just working with them to map everything out and get them to complain about the things that aren't feeling good for them. That's the best way to deal with change management is get people to have a little complaining therapy session so you know what's bugging them and what to fix, and build that relationship with them, is helpful. If you also take a step back and assume there's going to be human error factor as opposed to assuming that everyone's doing a perfect job. Think about where your risk areas are, and as a team, think about, okay, what are the places where there's a high chance of there being a mistake. We all know we're all doing our best and we're all trying to be as perfect as possible in the work that we do, but we know there's manual processes in here. Which are the ones that have a higher risk for us, and maybe that's a good place to start and look at where you can maybe potentially fix things or automate things with some software. Putting some rules in place. So, for instance, we work with a lot of not-for-profits, for instance, and when it comes to allocation rules, it's just like a whole other level of gray hair matter. So just making sure that there's documentation of, okay, for these projects or these grants, these are the codings that we're going to follow. That makes it really easy when you implement ApprovalMax to say, okay, if it's tied to this project, then here's the standard groups of accounts that these transactions can go into, and you've kind of done that legwork out of the gate, and you've also hopefully helped to reduce the month-over-month error if everybody's on the same page and you've got a little cheat sheet for how to do those allocations. Just having things like your vendor list clean up. I mean, that's a painful task. You might need to have like a pizza party afterwards for everyone to survive the trauma, but or whatever people need. Might need something stronger, but anyhow, just pick a project like that's going to help you to improve the state for everybody, because it's going to have to get done anyhow. You might as well just get started on it now. That can happen before you decide where you want to go software wise. And putting any and then looking at your approval processes. I mean, we didn't talk about fraud today, but that's one of my biggest risks as a financial expert is preventing fraud where possible. And we all know that for the most part, fraud happens with really good people in a really bad situation. And so that can happen with anybody at any time. And so if just like, assuming that there's a human error risk everywhere, assume that there's fraud risk everywhere, looking at the parts of your business or your client's business where there's opportunity for fraud, where you don't have good segregation of duties, and getting those structures in place and that thinking started on what we need to put in place to help improve the controls. And then again, through all this work that you're doing, you're going to build out your requirements list. You're going to document your processes. You've done all the legwork, and it hasn't, for people who have teams that are a little bit more reluctant to change, you haven't come in and said, we're putting new software in place today. You've come in and said, let's try to make things better. Let's take a look at everything and figure out where there's some gaps that then can easily move into a software conversation if you have a team who's a little bit more reluctant to change. And for those companies out there or teams where people are really like itching for change and they're wanting improvements, it's still part of the process, right? You still got to take a step back because you don't want to just jump into something without having cleaned up all your data first. Like, if you're moving, what was it, 5,000 vendors into ApprovalMax? I mean, I don't know that that's going to make your life a lot easier. You need to deal with those 5,000, repetitive vendors first. But sorry, that was a lot of things. Choose your own adventure there. Lots of options of things to work on, but they're all ones that are, they're not month-long processes, and they should start to help make some positive impact right away. I'll pass it over to Barry.
Yeah, no, I one thing you touched on, and obviously living in the software space, one thing I'm really passionate about too is just knowing how these processes work from system to system. Because what
Yeah.
we're seeing now, I mean, with especially from a tax compliance standpoint, is like people aren't you're not just invoicing out of your ERP now, or you're not just selling through your e-commerce solution or buying through other websites. There's usually multiple different sources, right? And so understanding those workflows and how those systems talk to each other, those are some areas that I've seen improvements kind of quickly because you could see where, hey, or sometimes reduce some reconciliation issues because, hey, maybe this isn't talking to this, or
Mm.
this data source for this site isn't the same as this site, right? And it just causes those issues. So those are a couple areas. And then like specifically from an AP standpoint, if there's consistent vendors that you're always having issues with, where their tax isn't quite right, or they're charging you tax when they aren't supposed to be, things like that, identify those vendors, right?
Mm.
Those are the vendors you want to make sure you're doing a deeper dive review on all the time. Maybe there's other vendors that aren't as much, right? Um, and then also just like any other AP related errors that you see, whether it's vendor related, product related, start identifying those, start keying those. And then as you're reviewing those processes too, I know Helena kind of mentioned it too, is ask why do we have this process in place,
Yeah.
right? The correct answer is not because we've
We've
always done
always
it
done
this way.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So we hear that all the time, and it's just like, okay, but why, right? And sometimes, hey, it's the person's been doing it for 15 years or 20 years
Yeah.
or 30 years, right? But sometimes things have changed, especially when you look at the world of software and automation in general, whichever you're using. There's a lot of ways that can maybe be a little bit more efficient. So that's the one thing that I always used to say is not an appropriate answer is because we've always done it that way, right? There's
Yeah.
there's there's got to be more justification behind it than just because of that.
Yeah,
For
maybe it
sure.
was just a coincidence that anything never broke up.
Yep,
Yeah. So yeah,
exactly.
it actually feels now like in an open world game. We have so many different pathways that you can, take an adventure and fix this and that, and so many things that we discussed today. If there will be let's say an introduction into the game, what would you take? Something that you would fix right now with a limited time, but you know that it's 100% will help any company with all of these AP inefficiencies. What would that be?
Elena, you want to take that one, or you want me to take that one to start?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I, I think having good approval processes in place,
Yep.
yeah, having the right approval processes in place is going to reduce a lot of the issues, data quality issues and fraud issues and those sorts of things, or risks, sorry.
hmm Yeah, and for me, I guess it'd be trying to have as clean a vendor data as you can have, right? And start identifying, hey, this vendor is usually not right, or you have issues with it, things like that. Like that would be the one that I would say is looking for a quick win. Start looking at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't have 50 copies of the same vendor. Try to keep it
Yeah.
just one, ideally.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Okay, actually, the same question to the audience. If, like right now, what would be the biggest quick win that your team could implement maybe this month? We're going to run the poll. Let me just put it into the screen.
And, and
Yeah.
Alex, I did see there was a question from Sherry in
Mhm.
the chat about wondering if Avalara works with ApprovalMax and QBO. And the short answer is yes, we do. I'd love to follow up either myself or someone on my team. Obviously, we can talk with you a little bit more to understand a bit more what your struggles are when it comes to tax compliance, because those two words are a very, very broad statement in a sense, right? Or it can be. So we'd be happy to see how we can help. But short answer is yes, we work with both solutions.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Barry. I was just about to, to move over to the QA, and I was waiting for this question. And thank you, Sherry, for this question, actually. We have a few more questions. I believe we will be finishing the poll very soon, and we're coming to. Okay, yeah. Sherry sent her email address, so we can then later on contact her. Thank you so much, Sherry. We'll be both in touch, making sure that both systems are connected together, that everything is working just as you would expect it to. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on into Q&A, I guess. I don't see the poll. All right, so now it is. Okay, so what are the biggest quick wins your team can implement this month? Majority would be the review tax codes. Of course, that's like the main problem, but also the standardized approval routing and vendor data cleanup. The two main, wins that you can make quick ones. is on top of that list, and that makes perfect sense. All right, thank you everyone for answering these polls. Let's get into Q&A. All right, I see the first question. My team still uses a mostly manual process. Where is the best place to start? I think we're coming to to this initial question about how do we select the software and what we should do in order if we're just doing things maybe via email, what should be our first steps?
I mean, I think I mentioned a bunch of those in some suggestions already, just in taking a step back, looking at your processes, mapping them out, figuring out your pain points, getting your requirements together. But another thing I didn't mention too, there's an exercise that I like to do with my team when we've got a process that's a bit sticky or yucky, and it's we do a start, stop, keep exercise. So you could take, okay, approvals, for instance. We've got a manual approval process. What do we want to start doing? What do we want to stop doing? And what do we want to keep doing? Wow, try to say that 10 times really fast. And just whiteboard it out, virtually or in person, depending on where you're at. And that can help to get some good ideation from the team. So as much as you can have the rest of the team involved in coming up with the solution, the easier it is from a change management standpoint. So, I mean, we do it on our team meetings every once in a while, or we'll just spend a half an hour and knock off a topic, and that can be really helpful to get everyone enrolled and engaged in fixing something and come up with some really good ideas. And it's also very telling because there's things that will come out in the stop that you didn't know were happening, and so it's a very quick and easy exercise to get feedback from people, and best to do it together as a group rather than get everyone to go off and do their own thinking and come back. Or just give you the answers, because it helps when people are hearing other people's thoughts as well through the process. Anything you want to add there, Barry?
No, I think you crushed it. I was just going to say, like, map out your processes, right? I think identifying what the issue is before you start looking at a solution is key, because you can look at tons of different vendors, right? But if we don't know what you're trying to solve for, it makes it tough. Or everybody then also looks the same too when you're looking at vendors. Like, oh, cool, you can do these 18 or 20 things, but you don't know which one will best fit for your company too sometimes.
For sure.
Perfect. I'm just cautious of time, so I have another question. I think this one is mainly for you, Barry. How confident should teams realistically feel about tax accuracy if their AP process isn't standardized? What do you think about
Oh,
that?
if it's not standardized today, that's a good question. So if it's not standardized today, I mean, I hope that you feel that it's more than 50% accurate. Unfortunately, when we have a lot of conversations, you know, depending on the size of the company, some people go, well, hey, we've just kind of thought we've done it, or some people don't have a process in place at all, right? And whether they're talking to Helena or us, it's, hey, we're trying to find something, right? So I don't feel right now, if you don't have an AP process standardized, as far as from a tax compliance and accuracy standpoint, you should hope that your vendors are doing it right. But unless you have a source of truth or something to validate that, it makes it tough to say accurately. So I hope it's above 50% when you're doing a gut check, because I mean, at least with your larger vendors.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Barry. Helene, do you have anything to add? I have one more question. I think it's for both of you.
Okay, yeah, no, I nothing to add there. I agree with Barry there. Yeah.
All right, perfect. And the last one is from Anna. We process invoices across multiple entities and locations. What should we prioritize to keep things consistent? What do you think on that?
Hmm.
I know for us, a lot of times, if you don't mind if I just jump on
Yeah,
that
please,
one,
please, please.
it's kind of having a single source of truth. I mean, that's where we've
Oh.
seen so many inaccuracies come. And this, there again, a plug for Avalara, right? Well, obviously I work for them, but any software, like make sure you're using the same data source for some of these things, especially when it comes to tax compliance, because if you're managing a tax rate table or in this system, and then a different one in that system, but you haven't updated that one or the other one in another system, right? Having that one spot of point of truth is key. And I think that's key for any solution that you're looking at. Doesn't have to be Avalara specifically. Love it if it
Yeah,
was, but it's having that one point of truth versus multiple different areas.
Yep.
for sure. I think the only thing I'd add is just that, it can get very complicated. Like we have clients that have that sell software. Software is a fun nugget in the US with the states. Some states exempt, some states not exempt. It just depends, and so it can get really complicated. And so you want to automate things and make things your life easier. But I think you should also just make sure that you're checking in with an expert periodically to make sure that things haven't changed or that the determinations are correct. And it's, you know, it might cost you a couple $100s or whatever, or, for some consulting time, but that versus the sales tax fines and fees that you can get, it kind of makes sense. So just if this is not your domain expertise that people pay you to do on a regular basis, then it's definitely a good investment to make sure that you're getting support from somebody who is an expert periodically, just to make sure that you're not opening yourself up to risk unintentionally, because assumptions are really gonna can cause you a lot of pain and suffering. So
Yeah.
bit of a doom and gloom ending to the webinar. Sorry.
Right.
Death and taxes.
Right.
Subscribe to the podcast. All
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Thank you both, Barry. Thank you, Helena. Thank you, everyone in the audience. There is a message in chat where you can find, first of all, if you want to give it a try, if you want to try ApprovalMax and sign up for a free trial, if you want to download the Avalara tax changes report, feel free to do it from the link in the chat as well. And also our LinkedIn profiles is also over there, so you can subscribe, connect, and we can then have a conversation one-on-one. Thank you everyone for being here with us today, and we really hope that you found this webinar useful. Have a lovely rest of your day, and bye-bye. Thank you once again.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.